We all know the Phil Collins of the 1980s. A commercial juggernaut who seemingly dominates the global airwaves by divine right.
But to wait for you is all I can do.
Between the years of 1980 and 1987, he averages a new hit single approximately every 84 days. He is the omnipresent voice of a generation, the man who turns heartbreak into a global currency and a stadium-filling spectacle. Most of us know the surface-level story, the sad, balding drummer whose wife leaves him, leading to the creation of the greatest drum fill in musical history. But there is a version of this story you do not know. Beyond the platinum records and the cheerful nice guy persona lies a volatile landscape of power struggles, high-stakes lawsuits, and a technological accident that changes the sound of recorded music forever. To understand the man, we must look beyond the glossy facade and reveal the friction that truly drives the machine. The story does not start in a sold-out stadium. It starts with a man turning a heavy key in a lock. The year is 1979. Phil Collins turns the key to his home in Surrey, his ears still ringing from a grueling Genesis tour. In his mind, he is the returning hero, the provider who has exhausted himself on the road to secure his family's future. He expects to walk into a house filled with the chaotic, warm sounds of a loving wife and a newborn son. Just 3 months earlier, in his memory, everything is perfect. He sees a mental flashback of a happy home, a domestic bliss he believes he is carefully maintaining. But as the door swings open, the silence is deafening. The house is shockingly, violently empty. Andrea is gone, and she has taken the children with her into the night. Phil is devastated, a man reduced to a wandering presence in his own hallways. He portrays himself to the world as the victim of a sudden, cruel abandonment, a man whose only crime was working too hard.
He was a workaholic. He wasn't going to go and take a year off and sit in his ass doing nothing, you know.
And the non-stop work ethic, you know, he seemed to be everywhere all the time.
He's going to get himself into the record books by choppering out of here, going to Wembley, getting on Concorde, and you will see him again later in this incredible concert from Philadelphia. Ladies and gentlemen, Phil Collins!
However, Andrea Bertarelli sees a very different reality from the other side of that closed door. In her perspective, Collins is a man possessed by a volatile and terrifying temper who values his career far above his kin. She recounts the day she finally reaches her breaking point. Phil leaves her just 2 days after the birth of their son to go back on the road with Genesis. He chooses the tour bus over the cradle, and now he stands in a silent house, wondering why the rooms are bare. He is hurt, he is profoundly lonely, and he does what many musicians do when the silence becomes a physical weight. He goes to the local pub, he drinks until the edges of reality blur, and then he retreats to the one place where he still possesses total, absolute control, the recording studio.
I can't remember the specific day of In the Air Tonight, but I mean, I had a really nice local pub that I had friends in, and I was going through a bit of a hard time, and so I'd go down there and have a few drinks and talk and laugh and then come back ready to work. You know, I had no one to answer to. I mean, you know, I had a wife and 2 children and 2 dogs, and I didn't have anything suddenly. You know, so it was like, a lot of time on my hands.
In the cold isolation of the studio, Phil begins to turn his internal agony into a sonic weapon. He is not writing songs in the traditional sense. He is performing a public exorcism of his own demons.
I was angry, I was miserable, I was sad, I was depressed about not having my family around. I mean, I was constantly on the phone to her, and the phone kept going down, and we argued a lot, and as people do when they go through that kind of thing.
He sits at the keyboard for hours, pacing restlessly between the chords of D minor and B flat major, creating an atmosphere of thick, anxious suspense. This is where the technological innovation happens. He begins to use a technique known as mumble lyrics, where the melody comes first and the phonetic sounds follow, with the actual words only appearing at the very last second. He is not looking for poetry. He is looking for a raw, guttural feeling. Spontaneity is his only guide through the darkness. At the same time, he is working with Peter Gabriel on the new track, Intruder. It is during these sessions that engineer Hugh Padgham accidentally leaves a reverse talkback microphone open on the SSL console. This cheap ball and biscuit microphone is heavily compressed and aggressively gated, and when Phil strikes the drums, the result is a massive explosive thud that vanishes the instant the sound drops.
And it went on to launch a whole bunch of sampling, people using the drum sound on their records. And
even had its own phrase to describe it.
yeah, and it's gone on from strength to strength. You know, I mean, it was used in Miami Vice. It was used in The Hangover with Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson?
It was used in a commercial in England for Cadbury's chocolate with a gorilla playing the drums, which went down very well. It was like a #1 advert.
This is the accidental birth of the gated reverb, the sound that will define the 1980s, but Phil uses it to process a very personal brand of pain. He is creating In the Air Tonight, a track that builds a tension so suffocating it feels like a physical hand around the listener's throat. People begin to invent their own dark stories about the lyrics, bizarre conspiracy theories suggesting that Phil actually witnessed a murder and invited the killer to a concert just to reveal him in the spotlight during the drum fill. It is a testament to the song's terrifying energy.
You were outside at night, and there was you saw someone drowning,
No.
and he didn't, and he let him drown. He let him drown, and you go, oh,
Yeah.
and you watch the man basically murder somebody. And then, so instead of calling the authorities, you invited the stranger to your concert, and then
Shone a light on him,
you
yeah.
you shone a light on him, and you sang In the Air Tonight, and you go, I know what you did, buddy. Yeah. Oh my God.
Okay.
That is the best story I've ever heard of.
I know. Unfortunately, none of it's true. I don't think people understood what it was about. And I've only started thinking about this recently because you've got to answer questions, you know. But most of my stuff is heart on your sleeve, you know. I say it like I mean it. Whereas that song is, I don't know what it means, you know. I mean, I improvise those lyrics. So I can't actually tell anybody what they mean. And so when there's this urban myth about what it's about, it's like it's not about that at all because I don't even know what it's about. But I think maybe people like what they don't understand, you know. It's the Messiah. How shall we follow you? You know?
But as he perfects this solo masterpiece, a new responsibility looms over his career. Genesis is in a state of hibernation. Peter Gabriel has walked out, gone for good, leaving the band's future in doubt.
Genesis could not continue to function as the only vehicle for his ideas.
I had been contacted by William Friedkin, who'd just done The Exorcist, which was a hot film at that time, and you know, really well-made film. And he had great ideas for sort of revolutionizing Hollywood and bringing in whole new teams of people who'd never worked in film before. And he wanted me in to do to work on ideas, story ideas and visual ideas. And for me, that was really quite exciting. I mean, still to this day, something that I enjoy doing.
The group is searching for a new identity, and Phil, despite his crumbling home life and personal wreckage, has just been thrust into the role of the new singer.
We put an advert in the Melody Maker, you know, Genesis / BS type group want singer. We did come up with a few, a lot of replies, about 400 replies.
Did anyone come close?
Not really, yeah. It was quite depressing because we'd be rehearsing for, you know, like 6 weeks or something, and every Monday we'd have 5 or 6 people down. And there was one guy that got through all those auditions, sort of, and actually came into the studio with us to try Squonk, which was on Trick of the Tail.
And it didn't work at all. And I was really there saying, well, just give me a chance, man. You know, they didn't want to say, you know, like, I want to do it. But I wanted to be asked, you know. So I started singing track by track. Said, well, we'll try this one, see how it goes. And it started to sound good.
He has a choice to make: stay home and attempt to mend his broken family, or take the lead and steer the band into an uncertain new era. He chooses the stage, and the fallout within the band is about to be just as messy and contentious as his first divorce. Phil takes his new creation, In the Air Tonight, to his Genesis bandmates during their rehearsals for the Duke album. He pitches it as a potential centerpiece for their new sound, believing it represents the future of the group. But the internal dynamics of Genesis are shifting in ways he does not yet understand. The keyboard player, Tony Banks, later denies that Phil ever proposed the song for a joint project at all.
That point, that sort of pivotal point around Duke, and he plays you some of the songs he's written.
And he didn't play In the Air Tonight. Doesn't matter what anybody tells you.
There is a fundamental disagreement over the very history of the band's creative process.
I don't remember the moment when I played In the Air Tonight. I just was very proud of it, so I don't understand why I would not have done. Because at that point, I hadn't made my record. So I didn't know how good or bad it was going to be, you know. I was, if anything, at least this song would have a home if it was on Duke. So I don't see the logic. I can't see the logic in saying that I wouldn't have played them everything, or at least what I thought they'd like.
Phil feels his influence is being subtly questioned, and this perceived rejection becomes the primary catalyst for his decision to launch a solo career. He realizes that if he wants to explore this new, dark and minimalist direction, he must do it entirely alone. But he does not leave Genesis. He stays because he says they are family, and he claims he does not want the entire road crew to find themselves suddenly unemployed. Underneath this nice guy explanation, however, a much more complex dynamic is at play. Phil's soaring solo fame allows him to steer Genesis toward a more pop-oriented, commercially viable sound, making the band immensely appealing to a global audience, but creating deep-seated interpersonal conflicts within the rehearsal room. Mike Rutherford and Tony Banks watch with a mixture of awe and unease as their drummer eclipses the band's collective fame. A burning road of constant touring and relentless promotion creates a friction that never truly dissipates. Phil is becoming increasingly distant from the original progressive rock material that defined the band's early years, and debates about the musical direction become a daily occurrence. The tension between his solo duties and his role in the band remains a simmering fire that threatens to consume the group's unity. Phil sees the history of the band one way. His bandmates see it another. It is a recurring pattern that mirrors the collapse of his first marriage, two sides of a story that will never truly align, and the public is about to see just how far Phil is willing to go to settle a score on national television. The world watches in 1981 as Phil Collins takes the stage for a performance on Top of the Pops, a British record chart television programme made by the BBC. On his keyboard stand sits a bucket of white paint and a brush. To the casual public, it is a raw industrial prop meant to give the set a modern look. To Andrea Bertarelli, sitting at home, it is a calculated, cruel and deeply personal attack. She has moved on from the marriage with a painter and decorator, and she feels Phil is using the national stage to humiliate her in front of millions.
He performed on Top of the Pops with a paint pot as a veil to the fact that his wife had gone off with a painter and decorator. We've always, the joke at the end of me at the time was, thank God she didn't run off with a fishmonger.
Phil publicly defends the prop as a simple piece of stage decoration, but Andrea does not buy the excuse for a single second.
I hadn't thought about that at all. This was just a purely practical thing. Workmate is the right height. T-chest is, kind of workmate T-chest, that works. And I found a pot of paint with it, I put it on top of the drum machine. The picture was complete. And I really did not get any any link between the fact that Andy had gone off with a decorator.
She feels sick, betrayed by a man who is successfully playing the role of the victim for massive financial gain. The narrative of the jilted, hard-working husband is highly profitable, and Phil leans into it with almost every subsequent hit single. But the victim has secrets of his own that the public never sees. Andrea alleges that Phil was involved in his own extramarital affairs long before the marriage ever reached its breaking point. She claims he is a man of terrible temper, a man who abandoned his newborn son for the sake of the road and his own ego. The battle for the truth moves from the music charts to the legal courts. After decades of Phil playing the role of the heartbroken hero in the press, Andrea launches libel proceedings against him in 2016, following the release of his memoir, Not Dead Yet. She describes the book as the final straw in a lifetime of being portrayed as a gold digger and a bad mother. She reveals that she was the one who divorced him on the grounds of his adultery, grounds that were not contested in court at the time. She wants to put a permanent stop to the wholly false statements that she believes have unfairly defined her life for 40 years. However, the ultimate outcome of this legal battle remains a mystery, hidden from the public eye behind non-disclosure agreements. Phil's silence on his own alleged infidelity remains a gaping hole in his personal history, even as he moves into a second marriage with Jill Tavelman, a marriage that will end not with a heart-wrenching song, but with the cold mechanical whine of a fax machine. The second marriage to Jill Tavelman is often glossed over in the Phil Collins legend, yet it provides the melancholy soundtrack to his mid-90s regret. As his professional career flies to ever greater heights, his private life is once again crashing and burning in the background. He is eventually forced to deny the long-standing allegations that he informs Jill of his desire to split via a cold fax message while he is on tour.
That affected my life, and it still is affecting my life, really, because everybody always writes, Phil Collins, new record, testify. Phil, who dumped his wife, by fact.
The songs that follow this period, such as Can't Turn Back the Years and Both Sides of the Story, are deeply reflective and heavily remorseful, dealing with the suffocating silence and the total lack of communication that has once again destroyed his domestic stability.
Too bad I love.
He is a man who can speak to millions through a microphone, but cannot find the words to talk to the woman sitting across the dinner table from him. Then comes his third wife, Orianne Sevi. A £25 million settlement in 2006 seems to be the final expensive end of his marital woes. But the story takes its most bizarre and humiliating turn yet. Phil and Orianne reconcile in 2015, only for Orianne to travel to Las Vegas in secret and marry a much younger male escort named Thomas Bates. She does not leave Phil's £33 million Miami mansion. Instead, she moves the escort into the house while Phil is away. She hires armed guards to patrol the property and effectively holds the house hostage, locking Phil out of his own home. The legal battle to evict her becomes a brutal smear campaign, with Orianne's legal team claiming in court filings that Phil has stopped showering, stopped brushing his teeth, and has become incapable of any form of physical intimacy. The house metaphor has come full circle in the most tragic way possible. In 1979, Phil walks into an empty house and feels the sharp sting of loneliness. In 2020, his house is full, but it is occupied by a male escort and armed guards who refuse to let him in. He is old, he is sick, and his life story has become a repetitive cycle of grand houses that never truly feel like homes. Phil Collins remains one of the most successful and influential musicians in history, a man whose unique rhythms changed the world even as his own personal life lacked any form of steady beat. To understand the complex technique and the immense talent behind the man, you must look at the drummers he admired most. You should watch our video on Phil Collins names his 8 favourite drummers to see the legendary musicians who inspired the architect of the gated reverb.